Welcome to the Lebra Podcast, where education leaders explore the intersection of culture, strategy, and innovation in today's schools. I'm your host, Nate Lichte, and in each episode, we'll uncover the leadership habits, systems, and bold ideas that help districts thrive. Hey, Terrence, thanks so much for joining us today on the Lebra Podcast. I'm excited to talk with you and hear some of the great things you're doing and hear more about your background. Maybe for some of the folks that are unfamiliar with you and kind of your journey that brought you to the superintendency, would you mind sharing with folks how'd you get an education and what ultimately led to the superintendent seat?
Yeah, two really tough questions. Led to education. I'm born and raised in San Francisco. I actually went to Catholic school K through 12, an
Wow.
all boys Catholic school right across the street from San Francisco City College, Archbishop Ritten High School. And I never thought I'd be in education. I thought I'd be in law enforcement. But lo and behold, as I became an adult, I started working with young children who were taken away from their home in protective custody, in protective custody. And so we would take care of students. That led me to teaching like a substitute at a non-public school, led me to teaching in the school system. I was a special education teacher for about 5 years before going into administration. And I loved human resources. I loved it because that was the pipeline to get into education. And I always questioned, like, how do some people get in? Why do some people go? And so it just kind of led me to being centered around how we recruit and retain people in our system. That then led through special education to human resources to the superintendency seat. And so there's this really quick story I want to share with you. So I was assistant superintendent in Southern California, about 30 miles west of Palm Springs. HR was my job that I loved. It was a lifelong job. I always wanted to work in HR. So I'm in this job. The superintendent at the time says, I'm going to retire. And I was like, okay, that's great. And so at the same time, I had another district recruiting me to go to HR. Well, when I told the superintendent that, everything changed. And the next thing you know, in the next month, the superintendent says, I said to the board, I'm retiring and I want to appoint Terrence. And I'm like, no, thank you. So somehow I ended up in the seat, and that was in 2016. And here I am today, going into my 11th school year. And so that's how I got into the seat. But it really wasn't for the love of that job. I didn't even know what the superintendent did, but it was more about being present in the space and how we take care of people that take care of students. So it really goes back. When I look at it, it's like a full circle, taking care of students, taking care of people. And now I'm just in a role that can see that from a smaller district perspective of what we can do best for our students that impacts our community.
So I love that, taking care of people. And I think this is where, I want to get into this conversation in just a little bit about taking care of people so that we can take care of kids. But before we do, let's introduce your current district. Can you tell folks a little bit about where the current district you serve in? Give us a little bit of overview about the community and just folks that aren't familiar with it.
I love when people ask about our district, Banning Unified, because it's a really small, tight-knit community with a lot of traditions. I actually was a superintendent in the next neighboring district. I spent 8 years there, and I've been here. I'm going into my 7th year here. So being in the community, it has done a lot for me. But when I was in the other district, they used to talk about where I am really bad. They used to say they don't do anything. It was the worst performing school district in the county, in Riverside County, Southern California, for years. So when I got here during the pandemic. It was 2020. And what I saw was a lack of systems, communication, understanding, not for anyone's fault. I mean, we had great teachers. We still do, wanted to do the work, but it was a lack of guidance and understanding where we're going. No clear purpose, no clear vision. And so in that time, in the past 6 years, a lot has changed. One of the biggest things that I think that you can't move forward unless you have is labor peace. You have to be able to have peace with your bargaining units, whether it's the teachers, classified employees, or whoever, because when you don't have that, you're not going anywhere. You may think you're going somewhere, but if the masses of folks don't trust you, don't believe you, you're not moving. And so prior to getting here, there was a what we call impasse every year, like just at the table and bargaining like this. Probably 3 years before I got here, they had gone through a strike, and that scarred everyone. Everyone was like, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. And so being an HR person, I'm like, what's going on? So it took several years to build relationships with the bargaining units to say, hey, it's not you versus us. It's us collectively to help students and move forward. And as that kind of changed over time, I will tell you that the trust was built And trust becomes predictable. When you have predictability and trust, people relax. They go, oh, I know they're going to do this again. I know this is how he is. When you're visible, being transparent, being seen, being heard, and represented. And I'll tell you, this is the key thing that changed everything. I did it in the previous district. When you listen. I had a union president in the previous district, and we did something called the listening tours. He and I went to every single school site, and I just listened for an hour. And I've done that. I think I've done it once here. And that changed everything because I was visible. I was in the space. I was listening. I took notes. And those things that we could do, knock them out right away. And other things we worked on. And over time, basically what happened is people saw that I was in the space. I was listening. But more importantly, I was doing something with what was being told to me, what was being shared, because I saw the value and I saw the change needed to happen. Since then, things have changed. The last thing that we're in, I think going to be going in year 4, is we started a school district podcast. It's called Banding Real Talk Podcast. We interview students, parents, community members, staff, and that has really given the voice of the people to the community. And I think those things alone have really changed the trust that we have in our district. It's created positive momentum to help students. And I'm really proud of that work because when I got here, it was nothing like that. Not for the fault of anyone, not that I've done all of these things. It's really been working with the team to develop what we feel is going to best impact students in our community.
So I want to, before we jump topics, I want to go back to what you mentioned about building relationships with your bargaining unit. So you talked about how you were doing listening tours. You talked about the podcast, but when you're, in your seat, kind of navigating all of these, external community forces that make a huge impact on our kids and our teachers and our principals, all these folks, building those healthy relationships with those people and those organizations to get the district kind of moving aligned in the right direction is huge. So how else did you, really cultivate this sort of high trust, healthy relationship with these other folks?
So there's a few things as an HR professional that I learned along the way. One was you should be meeting with that bargaining unit member, the president, whoever's leading that organization on a regular basis. So I brought over meeting with them as an executive team. Your executive team meets with their executive team. Those things have helped. But in honesty, what has really helped here, we've had the same teacher president this whole time. They were here when we had a strike, actually. And he's actually really level-headed. And I don't think people knew that ahead of time. And one thing he said to me that changed everything. He says, hey, we just want to be a part of the conversation. We don't want to run it. We just want to be a part of it because we have insight and perspectives that can assist in making informed decisions. And so that's what we do. Everything we do, if we're going to do something big, hey, it's the conversation about, we're thinking about this. What do you think? Could you get some feedback from the teachers? So that way we're not making decisions in a vacuum. We're making decisions that are informed based upon the perspective of the leadership, the union leadership, and the perspective of the staff. But we listen to all those things before we roll something out. That way we're doing it collectively. And what I like to call that is co-creating what we do. There's this term that you've heard, buy-in. I don't like that term because I'm not a salesperson. But what we can do is be innovative and create things. But when you create it with other people, they don't just do it, they own it too. So it's not like we're pushing, we're collectively working together. And that's really changed everything based upon that mindset.
So you mentioned earlier too, which I think that sort of term like co-create and getting the right people at the table to move things forwards is huge. And what I want to jump to next is really talking around, so many districts work and we build out these strategic plans, right? We get the right people at the table. We do the listening tours. We do a number of pieces that start to influence the strategic vision for what the district's going to look like for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? The big challenge with these is so many times it can be kind of that thing that we stick to the wall that's like, yeah, we did that and that's where we're headed. But really the power of that strategic plan is it really starts to take hold and starts to produce fruit when we look at how it becomes actionable across the district. So, can you talk to us a little bit about how did you do this in your district? And then, how did you arrive toward your district's strategic plan? When you were walking in, on the heels of a strike, you mentioned that there was no systems, no structures in place. And, you kind of had all these kind of competing different pieces going in. How'd you kind of unify and then get to where you had the strategic plan? And then
ultimately, how are you making it actionable today?
Those are great questions, but those are really challenging questions, but it's okay because we deal with challenging things every day. And so I'll say this. I don't think for me personally, there was never any magic thought or magic bullet. It's really been iterated over the course of time. So I'll say this, and it's something I started doing when I became a superintendent. Every time that I speak in front of large groups, whether it's the board, whether it's any groups, I always have up the mission and vision statement. That sets the tone. I've also have anyone who works on the leadership team, if they're presenting to their staff, whatever, they need to go over that in the beginning. So I will tell you, and actually something came up recently where they asked, do you know what the mission, do you know what the vision is? They may have not known every word, but they can pull out, prepare, inspire, and educate. That is our vision. And in the words of our mission, educating, diverse groups of students for success in the future. That's embedded because it's in everything we say. That way, we're not walking around like this. What are we doing? We can see where we're going, and that has really helped. The other thing that we are finally working on. So there's two more things I want to do before I retire. One is we're using a document called the RACI. It's responsibility, accountability, informed, and consulted with. Because one of the things in most organizations, you have people do this. Something happens, people go, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So this document for each department is listing out the major things that they do. And then it says who's accountable, who's responsible, who's informed, who needs to be consulted. Now we've been working on this process for the past 3 months. The goal is to implement it this year. From the district office perspective, if anything comes up, we know who's accountable, who should be working on it versus it wasn't me, it wasn't them. That's going to help provide some clarity and already does. The last thing I want to do before I retire, and it's going to take a few years to implement, is ensure that we are operating with a mindset of continuous improvement. How do we get away from, I can't stand compliance. It's not my thing because I'm not here for compliance. I'm here to make things better. So what I heard is the state of California is moving away from compliance to improvement science. I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen any evidence of it, but nevertheless, we're going to do it here. So that means if we have that same mindset, if we take any issue, we get to the root of the problem, we develop a practice, we develop a system to address that problem. When we keep getting better, everything will change. So those are the two things that I want to ensure that's in place before I leave. The RACI model, who does what, in just the mindset of improvement science. But I'll tell you this, it started with making sure everyone understands the mission, the vision, including the board.
Yeah.
They want to see it in real live time and then make adjustments as we go. Those have been the biggest things, but it's also keeping everyone with us, the union leaders, all of our leadership team having that same mindset. And that's what we're trying to develop.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so critical. I mean, there's this piece of this strategic plan that, getting the right community people together, getting the board, getting the cabinet, all of these folks together, right? The next challenge I want to hear some more detailed thoughts on is how do you keep principals and building level leaders engaged in that vision, right? A lot of times those are the leaders that are teachers that are on the ground with our kids and on the ground with our families. How do we keep them, or how do you keep them engaged, I guess, rather, into kind of, does that where this RACI model kind of pulls in as well? And talk to us a little bit about how you're doing that with your principals.
Principals are one of my favorite groups. And I'll just share something that most people know about me, if you know me, is that I was never a principal. So my route to the superintendency did not go through the principalship. I left the special education director and then went to the director of human resources, assistant sup, and then went straight to the superintendency. But when I became a superintendent, there were several principals who were like, you don't know. How are you going to help me? And what I quickly learned is that in order for me to help a principal, because I haven't been one, even though nowadays their job is way different than it used to be.
Yeah.
You have to be where they're at. You have to see through their eyes. You have to experience what they deal with. And this is my main kind of summary of what principals deal with. Probably in order: behavioral versus operational. Those two fight with each other all the time.
Yeah.
You're getting a call, you don't have teachers, the water went off, all of this stuff before the day even starts. And then when the day starts, you have behavior. You got all kinds of things happening. Those can suck up your entire day. So what's missing in that instructional piece? Where is the time to be in the classroom, know what's going on? And so last year, we did something different in our district. We started data chats where we look at the data for each school site, and we brought in each principal 3 times last year. We reviewed their data, And I just want to tell you this short success story. We have a early childhood school. It's called Florida Street Learning Discovery Center. Florida Street Discovery Center. It's where our TKs and preschool students go. They started doing data chats last year. They got an intervention teacher. And I looked at some data that they had. They were able to show which kids could not write their name, which students knew their name. And so then the intervention teacher was dialed in on those students who needed more from an early age.
Yeah.
If you catch students that early, research says that they will learn more. And so that's just an example of shifting what we did to say to the principal, your biggest job is instructional. It's instruction. So given that, how do you get time to focus on that? So we were able to use some dollars to hire APs at all our elementary school to create that balance. Because I've seen it for years and years and years. Principals don't have time to go into the classroom and look up on instruction. They're dealing with fires every day. And the world and society has changed so much that it's needed. And so what I've found is we're really focusing on that. That way our site administrators focus on instruction, what's happening in the classroom, and that moves the dial for student achievement.
Yeah. Yeah. That data point there that you mentioned, especially, looking all the way down into, the detailed levels of classrooms and instruction for kids and how that kind of, works back upstream back to that strategic plan. That's how you can measure and see exactly how things start to kind of move the needle. And it's in those day-to-day interactions and the right interventions at the right time, when that child incident, and then they get that aha moment, and that's how we kind of move it. But it takes time.
Well, here's the funny thing about this, Nate. So this is the first year that we did it. Again, I'm going into year 7, and every year since the pandemic, our scores are going up just a little bit. I'm really waiting to see that it goes up drastically this year, but if it doesn't, it's okay because we've seen progress. And the biggest thing is our staff, our teachers, our students are excited. We can feel it. The community, they see the change in our district, and that's what matters. Not a test score, but our behavior and our excitement about growth. And that's kind of where we are.
Yeah. And I'd argue, and this gets into sort of a larger philosophical conversation, but in my opinion, I would argue that community, the behavior and the reaction, the partnership between the district and the community and the behaviors that are exhibited there, that's arguably more important than any test score that's ever going to be an indicator of any type of success, right?
100%.
In any community.
100%. When I came here, there were several people who I'd known for a long time. They said, don't go to Banning. Don't go to Banning. I came anywhere. And then when I got here, they're like, you're not going to be here long. 7 years later. And this is a place where I'm going to retire because I see the love that our community has for our students and how hard our kids try. We had some students this year, our valedictorian going to Princeton on a full-ride scholarship.
Wow.
Valedictorian going to UCLA to be a neurosurgeon. I mean, we have so many great things going on, and it's just like this momentum that's like unstoppable, and it's the best space to be in, but that doesn't mean we're done. No, we got to keep moving. Improvement science. How do we keep getting better?
Yeah. So that brings me, I want to transition a little bit, keeping all of what we've just talked about with the strategic plan, what the district looked like before, and knowing that, you've served this district 7 years, been in the seat 11 years. I want to get to kind of this conversation around supporting staff well-being and combating, one of the ways that we kind of typically talk about this in education is as the superintendent and whoever sits in that seat, right? You're charged with the building and leading the culture and, of that organization and district. So when you think about, how you're gauging staff morale, and right, we've got to create this sort of ecosystem where people can be themselves, be authentic, but that we really mitigate burnouts, because as educators, it's so easy to do that. And how are you creating this kind of, healthy culture for individuals that are leading and doing the work in your district?
So there's a couple words I think about. One is we can't do it all. No one person can do it all. The other thing that comes up quite a bit is life balance, work balance. I don't think it exists. But the other word that I use to address that is boundaries. How do we create boundaries for ourselves? That way we're not doing all of this stuff and then just eroding our sense of self, our wellness, all of those things just to get it done versus I have to take care of myself. So I'll say this, Nate, it started for me a couple of years ago. So probably in the last 5 years or so, I've been 50 pounds heavier. So this is the first time for me that I've been at a stable weight for at least a year and a half. And so what I did is I changed everything. I changed what I do for myself. It's
Yeah.
what I feed myself. What do I read? What do I think about? What do I experience to put myself in a better space? And I'll say, when I look at our leadership team, it's bleeding out. It's because they've all seen me and they've seen the transition, but it also impacts my mood and my mentality. The other thing is I say no a lot more. It's nice to say yes, yes, yes. It's nice to say that. But what does that do to your well-being? What does that do to your time? What does that do to your team? So let me give you another example. Small community, very tight-knit community. Everyone wants you to do something to help them, which is great. That's what we're here for, to work together as a community to move us forward. But there are some things that are not in alignment with our goals.
Yeah.
So if we're doing some things that are not in alignment, then you tell me, why are we doing it? Because it's not an advancement enough. Basically, it takes us down a different direction. So I think for me and how I look at it, burnout comes when you don't give yourself an opportunity to rest and to recover. When we talk about professional athletes, right, they have seasons. The school system has a season too. So during that season, take the time off, rest and relax, rejuvenate to get back and come stronger. Our students do that. So for me, it's all about how do we develop boundaries to take care of ourselves first? Because if we don't do that, Nate, we can't take care of anyone else. And we're spinning our wheels doing things that may not be meaningful, aligned to the goal. So what we try to do in banding is be very clear about our vision and mission and align everything towards that. What are we doing that's not aligned? It's got to go.
Yeah.
And I think people are in a good space with that, but that helps protect you from doing all of these things. The last thing, I don't know what episode it is on the podcast, Fire Talk podcast. I talk about events are great. So we do these events. It's great. Families come out. We're doing great. But where's the results?
Yeah.
What are we measuring? We shouldn't just be doing things to do them. Everything we do should be attached to a goal. When we do that, we are using our energies towards our goal. So it's really changed my mind, my thinking, our district's thinking is that everything we do should be aligned to where we're going. If not, we're wasting our time.
Yeah.
Because there's so many other things to do.
Yeah. I think what you just said there is so important, especially for educators to hear right now. We've got this really unique climate as educators, right? And I think the other big key piece of this with all the educators I meet have this servant level heart, right? That's why it's so easy to say yes, because we want to go serve the community. We want to do what's best for kids. We're bought in. We want to, and we say yes to every single thing that we possibly can do because we think it's what's right and the right thing. But I think what you just said there is sort of pausing to make sure that it's aligned to how we can best meet the kids in the community with where they're at. And I think that's, what you were talking about is it's sort of a testament to kind of self-leadership. And you've got to be able to do that.
Well, let me tell you about our board really quickly. So when I got here, again, the state that we were in, everyone was used to, we just operate like this. So when we started doing a little bit better, I started, but then they wanted more. I want this, I want this, I want this. And then what did we do? Okay. Then we tried to do all this stuff and we were killing ourselves.
Yeah.
So at some point, this is about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I told the board, we can't do everything. If our goals are this, if this is our strategic plan, if this is our local accountability plan, if that's where our goals are, then it should be focused towards that. Because if you want me to do all these things, we can do it, but it takes us away from our goal, and our goals are already hard to get. The other thing our board is really good about and our district is we stay really low on the politics. We live in a political world. You cannot get away from politics in the educational system. And now it's like split, right? It's like polarized.
Right.
But one of the things by keeping our politics down, we keep the drama down.
Yeah.
When we keep the drama down, we can make more conscientious, informed decisions without letting the emotion of whatever we're being fed get in our way.
Yeah.
That way we're always focused on the goal. And that has seemed to really help.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the big challenge, especially for, aspiring superintendents and folks that are entering this role, which I want to get to here in a minute. I want to jump back a little bit. You've got a book that I think really connects to some of this topic about self-leadership and how do you lead and create, this culture. So talk to us a little bit about the book, and I know you've got a podcast as well that you're kind of articulating some of these and getting a little bit more, tangible in that. Tell us a little bit about it.
So the book is over my, what is this? This is my right shoulder there. It's called Courageous Fire. It's been out for about a year and a half, pushing 2 years. And the name came from, I was doing presentations nationwide with this one group. And we were preparing for it and we got this title. And the guy and I created the title. I was like, well, this is cool. So then I started doing presentations on that back in 8 years ago before the pandemic. And so it was just something that I just kind of kept coming back to me about this courageousness and why some people do not step up, step in, but step back and let things happen. I had this mentor, he told me leadership is not it's not a spectator sport. If you want to spectate, you're not leading. Leading is putting yourself in the space. And so given that the book has 10 chapters, talks about different topics, it gives you some reflections, some things to think about, but it's really all about this in a nutshell. All of us in life, I believe, have something inside of us that you need someone to spark or you ignite it, and you can do whatever you want to do and be the best at it. Some of us just don't know. It takes something to kind of spark that courageousness. But when that courageousness comes and you start to live it, there's nothing that can stop you. And the podcast, which is called Fire Talk, just started last year, it's really just a conversation with me and AI. The goal is to bring some guests in for next season to just talk about what is actually happening right now. How do we process through that? How do we build systems? How do we listen? How do we find out what's going on to get our path in the right direction? So it's really just dialogue on real day-to-day stuff for leaders or anyone who wants to advance themselves in life.
I see, and I think that's so huge for folks. And I've shared this with you. Last year we had one of the largest cohort of first-time superintendents into the seat. And I think, that specific topic and many of what we've talked about today is so crucial to folks that are aspiring or kind of moving into this role. I'm curious though, as with your experience, you've sat in the seat at a few different districts. You've got 11 years experience in the seat itself. What advice would you give to someone that is, aspiring to be a superintendent or they're in the seat for the first time? What would you share with them?
Well, I'm a little bit bold, more bold than most people are, but my suggestion is not bold really, because I've been out there on the national scene, statewide organizations. And one of the things that I find really interesting is that most people come into this role and they're trying to figure it out. If they say they're not trying to figure out, I don't know,
Yeah.
good for you, but they're trying to figure it out. So one of the things I think that happens is when you get in the role, you really start to feel kind of by yourself a little bit. I hear that a lot, but it's more about you. People start to treat you differently. And so given that, I think that you have to stay connected to something. So we have county meetings in where I live. Most school districts have a space where the local superintendents kind of get together in a formalized way. I would say find someone that you like, someone that you like spending time to, you like talking to, and you make that person your friend. It's no different than when I was in HR and an issue would come up. I had a group of people I would always call. I wouldn't call an attorney first. I would call them because they've dealt with it. They're dealing with experience. It's the same thing in this seat. I can call someone in a larger district who's dealt with some strikes, some really bad stuff, just say, hey, this is where I am. Anything to think about. They'll write it down for you. And the thing about it in this role is because there's so few superintendents out there, they have a tendency to develop a quick level of trust and share and be very authentic and candid. That really helps that person know that they're not alone. It's okay. And here's some things to think about. That changes everything, because the thing that I hate to see when superintendents get into this role and then these meetings come up, they're never there. They disappear. They're not engaged. That's telling me something. I get we're all busy, but it tells me something. And sometimes in the last 10 plus years, I see a lot of those people, they don't last in the role because they're trying to take on the work and they're trying to figure out and do it without talking to someone who has some experience, someone who can help them.
Yep.
So that's what I would say my biggest thing is go out, create a network, whether it's golf, whether it's going to the movies, having a sip of wine, whatever it is you like to do, find someone else in the role, because then it's not just you, it's you and that person, and you will collectively get stronger together.
Yeah. You've got to have that trusted support system, both local and, across the country to
Yes.
really be successful in this role, because you may not face it in, your first 2 or 6 months in the role, but eventually you will, and you will need, someone that is lived experience in the seat that's actively, you'll need that support system.
And so one of the things that's just happened to me recently, I was asked to be on the superintendent's panel a couple weekends ago. So I go, and it was just three of us. So I'm sitting next to the superintendent of San Bernardino City Schools. It's one of the largest school districts in California. The other person I'm sitting next to, they've been a superintendent for 18 years. They're
Wow.
locally too. And I said to myself, how in the world am I sitting with these two people? And so we had this little text exchange afterwards. And basically the guy in San Bernardino said, when we started, we looked up to some of these other people like, wow. And he said, that's us now. It's happened. By staying in the seat, by experiencing all this thing, it changes your life. And in return, you have the opportunity to change the lives of others and students. And that's one of the most powerful things that there is in education. I'm really grateful for that opportunity, but I wouldn't even be having that reflection if I didn't have those relationships with the peers that I have.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Terrence, this great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your insights with all the folks that are listening. And encourage everybody to check out your book and the podcast. And hopefully we'll have you back on again sometime.
Nate, great conversation. Thank you. You get me fired up. So I like it, Nate. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Great job.
Thank you.